Yeah, dude. We're really doing this. I don't know if this is a good idea.
My name is Kirillo. For years, the Chernobyl Exclusion Zone has been my obsession. I've walked the empty streets of Pripyat, listened to the wind howl through abandoned schools, and felt the weight of history in its silence. But I wasn't there for the ghosts of 1986. I was looking for a deeper ghost. A myth whispered among stalkers and conspiracy theorists. Object 203. A secret underground city built by the Soviets after the disaster. Most dismissed it as fantasy, but I had collected enough fragments, a redacted map, an old engineer's drunken confession, satellite thermal anomalies, to believe it was real. And I had assembled the only team who could help me find it. Anna, our engineer and resident skeptic, could make any piece of rusted machinery work. And Igor was our key. A former Soviet military engineer who served in the zone. He never spoke about what he did there, but his haunted eyes told me he knew more than he let on. After 3 days of navigating the radioactive marshlands, far from any tour group, we found it. Not a grand entrance, but a simple concrete ventilation shaft, almost completely swallowed by the forest. Its steel cover took all 3 of us to move. As we stared down into the perfect black abyss, I knew we had found it. The whispers were real. The air that rose from the shaft was cold, sterile, and ancient. It smelled of deep earth and cold metal. The descent was unnerving. The leather was Soviet-made, solid steel, but it seemed to go on forever. Our headlamps could only illuminate a few meters below us at a time, giving us the dizzying sensation of descending into an infinite void. After nearly 200 meters, the leather ended on a small platform in front of a massive industrial elevator. It was a freight elevator, large enough to hold a truck. The power was off, but that's why we had Anna. She worked her magic on the control panel, bypassing dead circuits, and with the groan of protesting metal, the auxiliary power flickered on. The button for the lowest level had no number. It was just a single downward-facing arrow. The descent in that elevator was the longest 10 minutes of my life. It was utterly silent, a perfect pressurized seal against the outside world. The depth gauge on Anna's device kept ticking down. 500 meters, 800, a full kilometer beneath the surface of the earth. No bunker, no mine shaft should be this deep. Igor stood in the corner, his face pale, his hands clenched into fists. He wasn't just nervous, he was afraid. He had been here before. The elevator doors opened not into a tunnel, but into a city, or a sterile imitation of one. We stepped out into a vast, cavernous space the size of a dozen football fields, illuminated by a low, humming, sourceless light. This was Object 203. It wasn't a residential city. There were no homes, no parks. It was a massive underground scientific industrial complex. Wide, clean streets separated enormous windowless buildings labeled biomechanics, quantum physics, and exogeology. Everything was built on a colossal scale, as if designed for giants. And it was all perfectly preserved. There was no dust, no decay, just an unnerving, profound silence. We explored one of the barracks. The beds were made, books were left open on desks. It was as if thousands of people had simply vanished in an instant. The power was on. The ventilation systems hummed softly. This place wasn't abandoned. It was paused, waiting. As we walked the empty streets of this dead underground metropolis, a chilling thought entered my mind. Maybe this place wasn't built for humans at all.
"Something's wrong," Anna said, her voice barely a whisper. She was staring at her custom-built spectrometer, a device far more sensitive than any standard Geiger counter. "I'm getting radiation readings, but it's not gamma? It's not alpha or beta, it's a signature I've never seen before." The energy was concentrated towards the center of the complex, from a building simply labeled the core. It was a low-level hum, but it was constant, and according to Anna, it was structurally complex. It wasn't the chaotic signature of decay, it was the ordered signature of a running machine. I looked at Igor. He was sweating, despite the cold. He stared down the long street towards the core, his face a mask of primal fear. "I recognize it," he muttered, his voice shaking. "The instructors, they called it echo radiation. They told us normal suits wouldn't protect us. They said, it doesn't just burn your cells, it unravels them, it rewrites them." He finally looked at me, his eyes wide with a terror that went beyond memories. "We have to leave, now." But it was too late for that. My obsession had brought us here, and I had to know the truth. As we moved deeper into the complex, we realized we weren't entirely alone. We saw them first as fleeting shadows at the far ends of long corridors. Then, we saw one up close. It was a security drone, but like nothing I'd ever seen. It was about the size of a dog, made of a dark chitinous material, and it moved on multiple spindly legs with an insect-like grace. It had no visible cameras or sensors, yet we felt watched. It patrolled its route, ignoring us, its movements silent and precise. Its design was not Soviet. It was not human. Then we found the markings. Scrawled on the metallic walls of a laboratory were complex, geometric symbols. They were arranged in patterns, like a language. Igor, who had seen every type of military insignia and code, just shook his head. "Not ours," was all he said. We were in a place built by humans, patrolled by alien machines, and marked by an unknown intelligence. The pieces didn't fit. This wasn't a research facility to study an anomaly. This was something else. A collaboration? A prison? The silence of the city started to feel less empty and more like the held breath of a predator. The building labeled the core was sealed by a blast door that could have withstood a direct nuclear strike, but its control panel was active. Kirilo, using his knowledge of old Soviet systems, managed to bypass the lock. The door opened into the heart of Object 203, the Central Archive. It was a vast, circular room. In the center, a pillar of pulsating light rose from the floor to the ceiling. All around it were computer terminals, old Soviet mainframes mixed with technology that looked decades ahead of its time. I sat down at the main console, and I found the logs, the real logs. The truth was worse than any conspiracy theory. In the early 1970s, deep Earth sonar scans detected a massive object of non-terrestrial origin sleeping deep beneath the Pripyat marsh. It was impossibly old. The decision was made at the highest level of the Politburo. They would build a nuclear power plant directly on top of it, not just for energy, but as a research facility, a way to study the object and hopefully to tap into its phenomenal power source without anyone in the West ever knowing. The Chernobyl nuclear power plant was a cover story from the very beginning.
I kept reading, my blood turning to ice. The logs from April 1986 laid it all bare. The infamous safety test at Reactor 4 was a lie. It was a reckless, top-secret experiment, the culmination of a decade of research. They were attempting to draw a massive, direct surge of energy from the alien object below, using the reactor as a conduit. The object reacted. The logs described it as a non-physical counter-surge, a wave of pure energy, the echo radiation Igor mentioned, flooded upwards from the depths. It didn't just cause a meltdown, it fundamentally destabilized the reactor's core on a quantum level. The explosion was the result of two forces colliding, the raw power of the atom and an alien energy they could not comprehend or control. The disaster wasn't just a nuclear accident. It was the catastrophic failure of a first contact experiment. The radioactive fallout that poisoned the land was only part of the story. A second, more insidious energy was also unleashed. The alien echo, which now saturated the very ground we stood on. That's what the zone was meant to contain. Not just radiation, but a secret that could shatter the world's understanding of physics, history, and our place in the universe. They lied to us. Igor's voice was broken. He stared at the screen, his face ashen. The logs triggered his memory, unlocking the things he had forced himself to forget. He was a liquidator, but my unit, we were different. We went deeper. He told us his story. While the world watched the heroic efforts to build the sarcophagus over the ruined reactor, his team was working in secret, 100 meters below. Their mission was to build a second sarcophagus, a deep, subterranean containment shield made of lead, boron, and materials he didn't recognize. They weren't just containing the reactor's remains. They were trying to re-imprison the alien object. The radiation suits they gave us were strange, heavy, lined with a silver mesh. The scientists told us it was for the echo. They said it was a living energy, and if you touched you, it would use your own DNA as a blueprint to make something new. We buried it. We buried it all under tons of concrete and steel, and we were sworn to silence. Suddenly, all the pieces clicked into place. The scale, the depth, the power systems. My God! I started laughing, a hollow, desperate sound that echoed in the silent control room. Anna and Igor stared at me. "Don't you see?" I said, pointing at the schematics on the screen. "This place wasn't built before the disaster. It was built after. We're not in a city. We're not in a research lab." I brought up a new file. The project name wasn't Object 203. That was a decoy. The real name was Containment Protocol 203. This entire massive, self-sustaining complex, the power, the drones, the blast doors, had only one purpose. It wasn't built to study the entity. It was built to be its prison. A cage, a kilometer deep, designed to monitor and suppress the waking god beneath Chernobyl. And just as I said it, a new reading appeared on Anna's spectrometer. The echo radiation. The signal wasn't just humming anymore. It was spiking, changing. It was becoming a focused, rhythmic pulse, like a heartbeat. It wasn't sleeping anymore. It was waking up. The moment the energy spiked, the complex came alive. A synthesized Russian voice echoed through the halls. "Внимание! Протокол сдерживания активирован. Все секторы герметизируются." Containment protocol activated. All sectors sealing. A deep grinding sound shook the entire city as colossal blast doors began to descend from the ceilings, blocking the main corridors. Red lights flashed, bathing the dead city in a blood-red glow. We were being locked in, trapped in the cage with the monster. We ran. We sprinted through the alien streets, the silent drones now moving with frantic purpose, reinforcing seals. We made it to the elevator shaft just as the final blast door began to close. We slid under it, the metal slamming into the ground behind us with a deafening boom. As our elevator ascended, racing towards the surface, a new sensation filled our minds. It wasn't a sound our ears could hear. It was a deep, resonant hum that vibrated in our skulls, in our bones. A powerful, intelligent, and impossibly ancient consciousness had noticed us. It was the echo of the thing below, and it was now a part of us. We had escaped the prison, but we would carry its secret, its echo, with us for the rest of our lives.